Hello, my name is Tommy, and today we're talking about types of reactions. So there are two different reactions, chemical and physical. Chemical changes is something that happens when a change in the chemical composition of a compound changes. So say in electrolysis, when water will form hydrogen and oxygen when an electric current passes through it. That would be an example of a chemical change because hydrogen and oxygen and water is splitting to form those two different gases. A physical change is something that doesn't change the composition of the chemicals and ends up just being physically different. So for an example, ice melting into water. Yes, it looks a lot different, but in reality that chemical composition is staying the same. H2O is still H2O. So let's go through these. So a color change. Usually this denotes a chemical reaction. A phase change, like I just said, denotes a physical reaction. Emission of light or heat. This denotes a chemical reaction. Formation of precipitate. In order for that precipitate to form, a new compound has to be made. So this is a chemical reaction. Separation of mixture. You're not changing anything, you're just separating them. It looks physically different. So this is a physical change. For this problem, we have to see what a reaction is for a specific occurrence. So for Nacl dissolving, it's an ionic compound. So what's going to happen is that water is going to pull it apart, or a polar compound will pull it apart and make it so that Na plus and Cl minus are in the compound, or are in the solution. So this will be a chemical change because NaCl is literally breaking apart. It's different as ions in the solution. Sugar dissolving is something different. Since it's a molecular compound, what happens when sugar dissolves is that those IMFs are being overcome by the polar substance. So instead of breaking apart and being different physically or chemically, it's still the same chemically. So this is actually a physical change. So you have to be careful when something dissolves. It's not always chemical because it could be something like sugar where its IMFs are overcome. Sodium dropped in water. So when sodium or any alkali metal is dropped in water, what ends up happening is that there's a big explosion and a bunch of light and heat is emitted. So that falls under a chemical change because bonds are being formed and releasing a bunch of energy and causing a big explosion. So liquid water being vaporized, that's an example of a phase change. So that would fall under physical. Steak being cooked. If anything is being cooked, boiled, or not boiled, if anything's being cooked, broiled, or toasted, it's probably a chemical change because it's different before and after. Chemically, that is. Filtering or precipitate from a solution. No chemicals are being changed, it's just separating. It's like if I cut a piece of paper with a blue bit and a red bit separating it. It's still the same chemically, it's just separate. So that would be a physical change.